Hey, race the first part of your story with intense pacing, unexpected twists, and a dynamic confrontation brewing. It'll ensure each part is long, engaging, and packed with emotion. The sound of the zipper sent a shiver through the air, a tiny metallic whisper that should have meant nothing. But in that second, it meant everything. Emma's hands hovered over the open suitcase, fingers curled like she wasn't sure whether to snatch the envelope inside or slam the lid shut and pretend she never saw it. I stood there, arms crossed, watching the color drain from her face. She wasn't stupid. No, Emma was anything but stupid. She knew. The suitcase I handed her wasn't the one she packed. I could see it in the way her eyes darted up to meet mine, her lips parting slightly as if she was about to say something. Some excuse, some lie, before thinking better of it. The hesitation, the microsecond of calculating before deciding on her next move. And that's what pissed me off the most. Not the affair itself, not even the fact that she had been planning this for weeks, months, maybe, but the fact that even now, when she had been caught red-handed, her first instinct wasn't regret. It was damage control. "What is this?" she asked, voice tight, controlled. I tilted my head slightly like I was considering the question. "Open it and find out." She swallowed. I could see the quick flicker of her pulse in her neck. For the first time in a long time, she was afraid of me, not in a physical way, but in a way that told me she suddenly realized she didn't know what I was capable of anymore. Good. She reached into the suitcase, picking up the envelope like it might bite her. Her hands were shaking slightly now. She knew. She knew before she even slid her nail under the flap, before she unfolded the papers inside. I watched her eyes skim the words, then stop, then dart back to the top. Her breath hitched. "Are you out of your mind?" she whispered, her voice sharp and furious. I didn't say anything. She looked back up at me, her face now a mask of outrage. "Divorce papers? Are you serious? You actually think you're gonna pull this stunt on me?" I leaned against the kitchen counter, studying her. "I already filed. That's just your copy." Her lips curled into something ugly. "You're insane." I shrugged. "Maybe, but at least I'm not a liar." That hit its mark. Her nostrils flared, her grip on the papers tightening. She opened her mouth, closed it, then laughed. Sharp and cruel. "Oh, so what, you think you're some genius detective now? You think you've been so clever? Please." And there it was. The shift. She was going on the attack. Emma straightened, smoothing her hands over her dress, tossing her hair back like she was bored, like she had already decided that whatever I thought I knew, it wasn't enough. "Fine," she said, tilting her chin up. "You went through my stuff. Good for you. You found what exactly? Lingerie? A weekend bag? And you thought what? That meant I was cheating? That I was sneaking off to, what? Meet some guy in a hotel? God, you're pathetic." The gaslighting was instantaneous. She was flipping the narrative before I could even get a word in, already painting herself as the victim. And the worst part? She was good at it. If I hadn't already known the truth, I might have started doubting myself. But I wasn't that man anymore. I reached into my pocket and pulled out my phone, unlocked it, and slid it across the counter toward her. "That's the hotel confirmation under your name," I said. "And that's the reservation under his." She didn't pick up the phone, but her breath hitched again. I continued. "And that's the photo of you two at the restaurant last week. And the one before that. And the one before that." Cocked my head. "Would you like me to keep going?" Silence. Her eyes flickered toward the phone, scanning the screen, the pictures. The ones I had printed were even worse. In those, she was touching him, her hand on his arm, his fingers at the small of her back. The kind of touches that don't happen between just friends. She knew she was caught, and still she didn't break. Instead, she let out a slow, amused breath and shook her head. "You've been stalking me," she said, like it was the most ridiculous thing in the world. "Do you hear yourself? You sound insane. I was just helping a coworker through a rough time. Wow, you're actually crazy." She was going to lie to the bitter end. I exhaled slowly, my grip tightening on the counter. "You have one chance, Emma." She blinked. "One chance for what?" "One chance to tell me the truth." Another pause, another calculation behind her eyes. Then, she rolled them so hard it was practically a performance. "Oh my God. Fine. You want the truth? Here's the truth, you're suffocating. You are obsessed with me, with control, with watching my every move, and honestly, I'm sick of it. I was sick of it a long time ago. You're paranoid, you're insecure, and you're driving me crazy. So yeah, I wanted a break. A weekend away from you. But I wasn't going to cheat. She scoffed. You actually think I'd be dumb enough to do that? She was unbelievable. I studied her for a long moment. Then I reached into my pocket and pulled out the airline confirmation. One-way ticket. Under her name. Her lips parted slightly. Lisa isn't even going on this trip with you, is she? I asked. Nothing. For the first time, she had no response. Packed with tension, psychological warfare, and emotional weight. The stakes are getting higher. For a moment, we just stood there, the weight of everything pressing down like a thick, suffocating fog. I could see it happening in real time, the way her brain scrambled for any possible way out of this. A loophole. A spin. Something to twist the story back in her favor. But she was cornered. And she knew it. Her fingers twitched against the countertop. Her breath came short and fast. And then, like flipping a switch, she scoffed, her face twisting into something condescending. Wow, she muttered. You really went all out, didn't you? She let out a dry, humorless laugh, shaking her head. This is actually pathetic. What, did you hire a private investigator? Spend hours stalking my every move? Jesus, you need help. She reached for the airline confirmation, but I pulled it back before she could snatch it away. Her jaw clenched. I kept my voice calm. Too calm. I didn't need a private investigator. You were sloppy. Got cocky. Left a trail a mile wide. I tilted my head slightly. Tell me something, Emma. Was it even supposed to be a weekend getaway? Or were you planning to disappear altogether? She blinked, a muscle jumping in her jaw. And that's when it really hit me. She wasn't coming back. This wasn't just a fling. Wasn't just a few nights in a hotel room with some random guy. This was an exit plan. A full-blown escape. She wasn't cheating. She was leaving. Without a word. Without a conversation. Without so much as a damn goodbye. Something inside me went cold. How long? I asked. Emma crossed her arms, feigning boredom. How long what? I stared her down. How long have you been planning to walk out on me? She didn't answer. I exhaled slowly, pushing a hand through my hair. I felt like I was looking at a stranger. This woman. This person standing in front of me with zero remorse, zero guilt, zero acknowledgement of the pain she was causing. Wasn't the woman I had married. Maybe she never was. Maybe I had spent years loving a ghost, an illusion of someone who had never actually existed. Emma clicked her tongue, shifting her weight. Oh my God. Do you hear yourself? You're acting like some tragic victim. She rolled her eyes. Newsflash, sweetheart. People fall out of love. It happens. You're not special. I clenched my jaw. Falling out of love doesn't mean you get to treat someone like garbage. She laughed. Actually laughed. Oh, please. Don't act like you're some innocent little puppy in all this. You've been unbearable for years. Controlling. Suffocating. Jealous over every little thing. I mean, Jesus, do you even hear yourself? Do you even realize how exhausting you are? She gestured toward the suitcase. I was trying to do this nicely, okay? I was trying to leave without making a huge, dramatic mess. But no. You had to turn it into a freaking soap opera. I felt something in my chest snap. I stepped forward, voice dangerously quiet. You were trying to leave nicely? She scoffed. Yeah. You know, without the theatrics. I let out a slow, bitter chuckle. So, what was the plan, huh? Sneak out, start a new life with your boyfriend? Let me come home to an empty house? Find out through a damn credit card statement that you were gone. She didn't answer, because that's exactly what she had planned. I let out a breath, shaking my head. Unbelievable. She shifted on her feet, annoyance flickering across her face. Jesus, are we done here? I have a flight to catch. That hit me like a punch to the gut. No hesitation. No second thoughts. No regret. I stared at her for a long, painful moment. Then I picked up the suitcase, the one I had packed for her. The one filled with nothing but the divorce papers and a few meaningless items. I handed it to her. She snatched it from me, eyes burning with defiance. You think this is gonna stop me? She sneered. You think some stupid stunt is gonna make me change my mind? I shook my head. No. I think you made your choice a long time ago. She scoffed, rolling her eyes so hard I thought they might get stuck. God, you're so dramatic. She turned on her heel, heading for the door. And that's when I said it. His name. Out loud. Clear as day. She froze. Her whole body tensed like she had been struck by lightning. For the first time in this entire shitstorm, she looked genuinely rattled. Slowly, she turned back around. Her expression was unreadable now. Guarded. "What did you just say?" she asked, her voice eerily calm. I repeated his name. Let it sit there between us like a loaded gun. She swallowed. "You don't know what you're talking about." I arched a brow. "Don't I?" A long silence. And then finally, a crack in the mask. A flicker of something that looked almost like fear. Not of me. Of what else I knew. The silence stretched between us, thick and suffocating, like the air before a thunderstorm. I could see it happening, the war inside her head, the calculations, the frantic scramble for an escape route that didn't exist. She had been so damn sure of herself, so confident that she had controlled the situation, manipulated the narrative, kept me blind and clueless. But now she wasn't sure what I knew. I watched her swallow, her jaw tightening. "Where did you hear that name?" I took a slow step forward, never breaking eye contact. "That's your question?" I scoffed. "Not how I know, not what I know, but where I heard it." "That's interesting, Emma." She wet her lips, shifting on her feet. "Because you don't know anything." I chuckled. Wrong move. She had just told me everything. I crossed my arms. "You're not even gonna bother denying it, huh?" She exhaled sharply, her eyes flicking toward the door like she was calculating if she could just grab her suitcase and leave. I wasn't going to let her. "Who is he?" I asked. She scoffed. "Oh, please. Like you don't already have some big conspiracy theory worked out. Try me." She hesitated. Just for a second. But it was enough. Enough for me to see the panic behind her eyes. And that's when I knew. She wasn't just having an affair. This was bigger. I leaned against the counter, tilting my head. "You know, at first, I thought it was just some random guy. Some coworker. Someone you met at a bar. I thought, okay, maybe it's just physical. Maybe you got bored. Needed a little thrill. Something to break the monotony." I shrugged. "But this? The lying? The plane ticket? The fact that you won't even say his name?" I let out a slow breath. "Yeah, that tells me everything." Her lips pressed into a thin line. I could feel it now, the shift in the air. The moment where the game stopped being about cheating and started being about power. I took another step toward her, lowering my voice. "So, let's cut the bull asterisk 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 asterisk. Who is he?" Emma squared her shoulders, her expression hardening. "You don't get to interrogate me like some jealous psycho. I don't owe you an explanation." I laughed under my breath. "You don't owe me an explanation?" I gestured around us. "You were going to walk out of this house like I never existed. Disappear. Run off to some new life you built behind my back. And you think you don't owe me an explanation?" Her nostrils flared. "What do you want me to say? That I'm sorry? That it was a mistake?" "Would that make you feel better?" I exhaled slowly, shaking my head. "You're not sorry. Not even a little." She didn't even bother denying it. Instead, she rolled her eyes, muttering under her breath, "Unbelievable." I narrowed my eyes. "You know what's unbelievable, Emma? The fact that you thought you could actually get away with this." She barked out a laugh. "Oh, grow up. You act like I murdered someone. People leave. Marriages end. It happens. People leave," I repeated. "Yeah, they do. But normal people? They have a conversation. They don't sneak around for months, plan a whole new life behind their spouse's back, and try to pull off some elaborate vanishing act." She smirked. "Oh, so now I'm some criminal mastermind?" I let out a breath, studying her. "No. You're just a coward." That hit its mark. Her jaw clenched. Her fingers curled into fists at her sides. But I wasn't done. I picked up my phone and turned the screen toward her. The text messages were already open. From him. Her breath hitched. Just slightly. Just enough for me to see it. "I wonder what he'd say," I mused. "If I called him right now. If I let him know that you didn't just get caught, you lost." Her face twisted. "You wouldn't." I arched a brow. "Wouldn't I?" For the first time, there was something new in her expression. Something that almost looked like fear. Not fear of me. Fear of what I was about to do. And that's when I knew I had the upper hand. The moment hung between us, thick with tension, her breath uneven, my heart pounding with an anger I hadn't even fully processed yet. Emma wasn't scared of me. She was scared of what I was capable of now. For months, maybe years, she had been in control, pulling the strings, lying so effortlessly that I had probably swallowed more of her bullshit than I'd ever realize. But now? Now she was looking at me like I was a variable she hadn't accounted for. I tapped the phone screen, letting the bright glow of the text thread illuminate her face. You recognize this number, don't you? I said, my voice casual. Her throat bobbed as she swallowed. I don't. I didn't let her finish. I flicked through the messages, scrolling past weeks of her digital infidelity. Hidden plans, inside jokes, private conversations that never should have existed. Some were tame. Others made my stomach twist in ways I didn't know were possible. And at the bottom, the most recent exchange. Emma, can't wait to finally be free. Just a few more hours. Him, I've got everything ready. Are you nervous? Emma, no, I'm just done. I let the words hang in the air between us before I finally looked back up at her. Just a few more hours, I repeated. That's cute. Emma's mouth opened, but she didn't say anything. She couldn't, because what excuse could she possibly make now? I watched her fingers twitch at her sides. She wanted to grab the phone, wanted to shut it down, erase the evidence, rip it from my hands, and destroy the truth before it could do any more damage. But we were so far past that now. So instead, she did what she always did. She pivoted. Her expression smoothed out, her voice dropping into that same exasperated tone she always used when she was trying to make me feel like I was the problem. Okay, you know what? This is ridiculous. You need to calm down. I laughed short and sharp. Calm down. I gestured around us. Emma, you were about to walk out that door, get on a one-way flight, and disappear. And you think I should be calm? She exhaled through her nose, shaking her head. I don't have to explain myself to you. I took a slow step toward her. You already did. I lifted the phone. It's all right here. Something flashed across her face. For a split second, I saw it, the loss of control. The panic. And then, just as quickly, she buried it under indifference. Her chin lifted. So what now? You gonna call him? I tilted my head. Do you want me to? She hesitated. Just for a second. But it was enough. I smirked. That's what I thought. Emma's jaw clenched, her nails digging into her palms. She was unraveling, coming apart at the seams in a way I had never seen before. And it felt good. Not because I enjoyed watching her squirm, but because for the first time in this entire nightmare, she wasn't the one in control. I was. I let the silence stretch between us, watching her, waiting. She knew she had lost. She knew I had her cornered. But she wasn't the type to beg. That wasn't her style. Instead, she let out a slow, measured breath and smiled. It wasn't a happy smile. It wasn't even a smug one. It was cold. Detached. Like she had just decided something. And then she said, do it. I frowned. She took a step closer, tilting her head. Go ahead. Call him. Put him on speaker. Let's have a chat. She was testing me. Calling my bluff. Because she thought I wouldn't do it. She thought I was still the same person she had spent years gaslighting, manipulating, walking all over. She thought she still had power over me. I smiled back. Then, without breaking eye contact, I pressed the call button. Her smirk faltered. 1 ring. 2. 3. Then click. A voice. Hey babe. You at the airport? Emma's entire body tensed. I watched the blood drain from her face, her lips parting, her eyes going wide with something that almost looked like horror. I put the phone on speaker. Her voice was barely above a whisper. You son of a too late. He had already heard everything. The silence that followed was so sharp it could have cut through steel. The voice on the other end was casual, expectant, completely unaware of the absolute disaster unfolding on this side of the line. Babe, the man, her man, said again, confusion creeping into his tone. You there? Emma didn't move. Her whole body had gone stiff, her fingers curled into tight, white-knuckled fists at her sides. She wasn't just shocked, she was caught in the middle of something she hadn't planned for. I could see her mind spinning, trying to figure out her next move. How to salvage this? How to flip it back in her favor? But there was no way out this time. I let the silence stretch a second longer before finally speaking. My voice was calm. Too calm. She's here, I said. A sharp inhale from the other end. Who the hell is this? I smirked. That's a great question. Shouldn't you know? I mean, you've been texting my wife for months. Dead silence. And then the click of the call disconnecting. I exhaled a slow, satisfied breath as I set the phone down on the counter. Emma, on the other hand, was seething. Her fists tightened, her shoulders rising and falling with short, angry breaths. And when she finally looked up at me, there was murder in her eyes. What? She hissed, her voice trembling with rage. Did you just do? I crossed my arms, arching a brow. Exposed you. She let out a sharp, bitter laugh. Oh, congratulations. You think that was some kind of power move? I tilted my head. I think it was long overdue. Her lips curled into something cruel. You're pathetic. I shrugged. You're a liar. She let out another laugh, but this one was different. It wasn't amused. It wasn't smug. It was unhinged. Then, she did something that almost threw me. She relaxed. The tension in her shoulders disappeared. The anger on her face melted away. She exhaled slowly, shaking her head like she had just decided something. And then she smirked. Smirked, like she still had the upper hand. Like this was all a game, and she was about to make her next move. I watched her carefully, every muscle in my body wound tight. Then finally she spoke. You think this is a win for you? She asked, her voice smooth, almost amused. You think calling him just ruined my life? I narrowed my eyes. I think you're running out of places to hide. She let out a slow, deliberate breath, running a hand through her hair. You really are so naive. I didn't react. I wasn't going to let her control the conversation anymore. So I just waited. And sure enough, she continued. You have no idea what you just did, she said, voice almost mocking. You think he's going to be shocked? That he's going to be pissed at me? Please. She rolled her eyes. He already knew I was married. My stomach twisted. She smiled. That's right. He knew. She leaned forward, lowering her voice like she was sharing some deep, dark secret. And he didn't care. I clenched my jaw. You expect me to believe that? She scoffed. Believe whatever the hell you want. But here's the thing, she took a step closer, tilting her head. I was leaving you either way. I inhaled sharply through my nose. She saw it, felt it, and she fed off it. You think I was planning some big, romantic runaway escape? She scoffed. Grow up. This isn't a fairy tale. This isn't about me being in love with someone else. She smirked. I was just done with you. Something sharp twisted in my chest, but I refused to let it show. Then why lie? I asked. Why sneak around? Why make a whole damn exit strategy if this wasn't some big affair? She shrugged. Because I didn't feel like dealing with you. She said it so casually, like it was obvious, like I was beneath her time and effort. I stared at her. You're unbelievable. She smiled. I know. I exhaled slowly, pressing my palms against the counter, grounding myself. So what now? I asked. You still leaving? Gonna hop on that plane. Run off into the sunset with your boyfriend who just hung up on you. Emma's smirk faltered. She hadn't planned for that. She had expected outrage. Expected me to scream, beg, cry, something. Anything that made her the victim again. But I wasn't playing her game. So I pushed harder. You thought you were so damn smart, I said. Thought you'd just walk out that door, start a brand new life, and never have to face the consequences of what you did. I shook my head, letting out a humorless laugh. But here's the thing, Emma, you lost. She stared at me, her mask cracking bit by bit. I could see it now. The panic, the realization, the fact that for the first time in our entire relationship, she was truly and completely powerless. And I was just getting started. Emma had never looked more human to me than in that moment. Gone was the cold, calculated woman who had spent months carefully weaving her escape plan. Gone was the smug, untouchable manipulator who had controlled the narrative for so long. What was left was something raw. Something exposed. She wasn't winning anymore. She was losing. And she knew it. I could see the rapid calculations behind her eyes, the frantic attempt to regain control, to turn this around before it all crumbled beneath her. But there was no way out. She had burned every exit behind her, and now she was standing in the wreckage. I leaned against the counter, studying her. So? I asked. What now? Her lips parted slightly, but no words came out. For the first time since this entire nightmare started, Emma didn't have an answer. And I let her sit in that silence. She blinked, exhaled sharply, then forced a smirk. A weak, desperate attempt at salvaging her pride. You act like you've done something here, she said, voice laced with feigned amusement. I arched a brow. Haven't I? She scoffed. You think you're the one in control? Please. She straightened her shoulders, flipping her hair back like she was completely unbothered. Let's be real. You didn't stop me from leaving. You didn't ruin some grand love affair. You didn't even catch me in some huge, scandalous betrayal. She gestured toward the divorce papers in her suitcase. I was leaving anyway. I tilted my head. So leave. Her breath hitched. She wasn't expecting that. I pushed away from the counter, crossing my arms. Go on. Walk out that door. Nothing's stopping you now. Her fingers twitched at her sides. She hesitated, and that's when I saw the truth. Emma had never actually pictured this part. She had planned the escape, the affair, the lie, but she had never truly pictured what it would feel like to actually walk away. To stand on the edge of everything she had destroyed and take that final step. She had assumed it would be easy. But now, with the weight of reality pressing down on her, she wasn't so sure anymore. I exhaled slowly, shaking my head. This is hilarious. Emma narrowed her eyes. What? You? I let out a humorless chuckle. For months you've been so sure that you were this brilliant mastermind. That you were just gonna pull this little disappearing act and everything would go perfectly. I scoffed. And now that you actually have the chance to leave? You can't even move. Her nostrils flared. You don't know what you're talking about. Don't I? I gestured toward the door. Go on, Emma. You were so ready to start your brand new life, weren't you? So go. Her jaw clenched. You think this is a game? No, I said, my voice steady. I think this is your reckoning. She swallowed, her throat bobbing, but she still held her ground. You think I'm scared to leave? You think I'll stay just because you've thrown some little tantrum? She smirked, but it was fragile now. Cracking at the edges. That's cute. I tilted my head. You're still trying to play tough? I stepped closer. Emma, I've already won. Her breath stuttered. She hated that. Hated that I knew it. For months, maybe even years, she had convinced herself that I was the one who was weak. That I was pathetic, clueless, disposable. But now? She saw the truth. I wasn't weak. I wasn't pathetic. And I wasn't disposable. She was. I watched her chest rise and fall with shallow, uneven breaths. I watched her fingers twitch, her body tense, her nails bite into her palms. She was panicking. Not because she felt guilty. Not because she regretted what she did. Because she had lost control. And then, like a last, desperate attempt to reclaim it, she straightened her shoulders and sneered, You're pathetic. I just smiled. And that was the final nail in the coffin. Because Emma thrived on control. She fed off my reactions. My anger. My sadness. My pain. But now? Now, I wasn't giving her anything. And she couldn't handle it. She inhaled sharply, her mask crumbling for just a split second before she turned on her heel and grabbed the suitcase. She stormed toward the door, yanking it open. And then she froze. I watched the exact moment when her entire plan disintegrated. Because standing there, right outside our house, was him. The other man. Emma's escape plan in the flesh. And he looked pissed. Emma froze in the doorway, her entire body going rigid as she locked eyes with the man who was supposed to be her way out. I didn't have to see her face to know she was panicking. Because this wasn't part of the plan. She had expected to slither away quietly to control the how and when of everything. She had expected to walk out on her terms. But now her worlds were colliding. I took my time walking up behind her, leaning against the doorframe as I looked at the man standing on my porch. And I had to admit it was almost disappointing. When you imagine the person your wife is cheating with, you think of someone better than you. Someone younger, maybe. Stronger. More successful. Smarter. Some kind of upgrade that makes the betrayal sting even more. But this guy? This guy was nothing special. A little taller than me, sure. Maybe a few years younger. But the way he carried himself? The way his expression twisted when he realized what was happening? He was just a man. A man who thought he was getting away with something. A man who thought he was about to swoop in and steal someone else's wife without consequences. And now he was realizing he was wrong. His eyes flicked between us, trying to make sense of the situation. Emma, he said carefully. What's going on? Emma just stood there. She was still gripping the handle of the suitcase, her knuckles white, her breathing shaky, because this wasn't how she wanted this to go. I smirked. Hey, man. He blinked, shifting uncomfortably. He cleared his throat. Are you her husband? I finished for him. Yeah. His jaw tightened. I know who you are. I chuckled. Do you? His expression flickered, just for a second. He didn't know me. He knew the version of me Emma had fed him. The villain in her story. The insecure, overbearing, controlling husband she had painted me as. And I could see the exact moment he realized she might have lied to him, too. I tilted my head, watching him closely. Let me guess, you were expecting to pick her up at the airport? Silence. His jaw clenched. Emma. His voice was sharper now, like he was just starting to put it all together. Why the hell is he here? Emma finally snapped out of whatever internal crisis she was having and turned to face him. She stopped, licking her lips, trying to think fast. She was about to spin some kind of lie, I could feel it. But for the first time, she didn't know which one would work. I leaned in slightly. Go on, sweetheart. Tell him. She shot me a sharp glare before quickly smoothing her expression, turning back to her boyfriend with something that almost resembled sincerity. Baby, listen, she started, voice soft, almost pleading. He didn't look convinced. Tell me what, exactly? Emma hesitated, just for a second. And then she did what she always did. She pivoted. This isn't what it looks like, she said, stepping toward him. I barked out a laugh. Oh, that's a classic. She ignored me. He's just trying to make this dramatic, she said, lowering her voice like she was in control again. I was leaving, just like we planned. But she gestured at me, her expression twisting into frustrated exasperation. He went through my stuff. He's trying to turn this into some big confrontation. I smirked, crossing my arms. That's funny because I'm not the one who called him. Emma's lips parted slightly, her confidence faltering. And that's when it hit her. She had no way to explain how he ended up here. Because she hadn't told him to come. He had come on his own. Which meant he was already suspicious. I saw the slightest flicker of realization cross her face before she masked it. But her boyfriend? He saw it too. His expression darkened. His eyes locked on hers. Emma, he said, voice lower now. Did you lie to me? Emma tensed. I almost laughed. Now this was getting good. She opened her mouth, probably about to spin some new story, but he shook his head. Cut the bullshit, he snapped. Did you lie to me? Emma's nostrils flared. Oh, don't act like you're innocent in all this. That was her mistake. That was where she lost him. Because now she was deflecting. And he knew it. His jaw clenched, his posture stiffening. He exhaled sharply, rubbing a hand over his face. Jesus Christ, he muttered under his breath. Emma panicked. She reached for his arm. Baby, please, he yanked away. No, his voice was firm, final. No more bullshit. Just answer me, did you lie? Emma hesitated. Just for a second. But that was all it took. Because if she had nothing to hide, she wouldn't have hesitated at all. And in that moment, I watched everything shift. He wasn't her escape anymore. He wasn't her ticket to freedom. He was just another person she had manipulated. And now? He knew it. Emma had spent months, maybe years, crafting her perfect escape. She had built an entire fantasy world where she was the victim, where I was the villain, and where this other man, this complete idiot standing on my porch, was her hero. And now it was all falling apart. Because for the first time he saw her. Not the version she had sold him. Not the damsel in distress. Trapped in a loveless marriage with a controlling, obsessive husband. No, he saw what I saw. A liar. A manipulator. Someone who had tricked him just as easily as she had tricked me. And watching the realization settle into his face, watching him finally understand that he had been nothing more than a piece in her game, it was almost satisfying. Almost. He took a slow step back, shaking his head. Wow, he muttered, mostly to himself. Emma snapped. Her fingers curled into tight fists, her expression twisting into something almost feral. She turned on me, eyes blazing with pure hatred. This is what you wanted, isn't it? She spat. I arched a brow. What's that? She gestured wildly between herself and the other man. To ruin everything. To make this ugly. To make sure I have nothing left. I laughed. A sharp, humorless sound. Emma, you did that all by yourself. Her jaw clenched. She whirled back to her boyfriend, grabbing his wrist. Baby, don't listen to him. He's trying to twist this. That's what he does. He's a master manipulator. He's been doing it to me for years. I snorted. Oh, that's rich. The other man just stared at her, his face unreadable. She tried again, her voice softer now, more desperate. Please, baby. You know me. You know the truth. And for a moment, just a moment, I saw something flicker in his expression. Doubt. Hope. He wanted to believe her. Because that's what Emma did. She made you want to believe her even when the truth was staring you right in the face. But then his gaze flicked to me. Not as a threat. Not as a rival. Just a man. And I let him see it. The exhaustion. The wreckage of what she had done. The truth. His face hardened. And that's when I knew. She had lost him. Emma saw it too. Her panic exploded into rage. Oh my God! She snapped, throwing up her hands. Are you actually going to believe him over me? Seriously? Her boyfriend, ex-boyfriend, probably, let out a slow breath, his expression full of something ugly. Emma, he said, voice low, almost like he couldn't believe what he was about to say out loud. How many other men have there been? Emma froze. Her entire body went rigid, her breath catching in her throat. And in that 1 second, that tiny, fleeting hesitation, he got his answer. So did I. It wasn't just him. He exhaled sharply, shaking his head. Jesus Christ. Emma's mask snapped. Gone was the helpless, misunderstood victim. Gone was the sweet, loving girlfriend. What was left? Something cold. Something ugly. Something rotten to the core. She straightened, her lips curling into a sneer. Oh, get over yourself. Her ex took a slow step back. His hands curled into fists at his sides, not in anger, in restraint. Like he was realizing all at once that he had been played for a fool. That he had thrown everything away for a woman who was incapable of love. Unbelievable, he muttered under his breath. Emma laughed. A short, sharp, bitter sound. Oh, spare me the theatrics, she spat. You think you're some tragic victim here? Please. You were just as bad as me. His eyes flashed. The hell does that mean? Emma smiled. But it wasn't a smirk. It was something crueler. Come on, baby, she crooned, voice dripping with fake sympathy. Did you really think you were the only one? His face shattered. And just like that, Emma had burned her last bridge. He took another step back. We're done, he said, voice flat. Final. Emma just rolled her eyes. Oh, what a loss. He didn't take the bait. He just turned to me. And for a long moment, we just looked at each other. Not as enemies. Not as men who had fought over the same woman. Just as two people who had been used. And then, without another word, he walked away. Emma watched him go, her expression blank. But her hands? They were shaking. She hated this. Not because she had lost him. She didn't care about him. She hated losing. And now she had nothing left. I stepped closer, lowering my voice. You're finally out of moves. Emma's head snapped toward me, her eyes burning with fury. She opened her mouth, ready to lash out, ready to sink her claws into me one last time. But I just smiled. And then, I walked away first. I didn't look back. Not at Emma. Not at the crumbling wreckage of everything she had built on lies. Not at the suitcase still clutched in her shaking hands. I just walked inside, feeling the weight of the moment settle over me, pressing down like 1,000 pounds of nothing. I should have felt satisfied. I should have felt vindicated. Hell, I should have felt something. But all I felt was exhausted. The kind of exhaustion that seeps into your bones. The kind that makes your body feel like dead weight. The kind that doesn't go away no matter how much you sleep, because it isn't physical. It's years of betrayal finally catching up all at once. I ran a hand over my face, exhaling slowly. Outside, Emma was still standing on the porch, her silhouette visible through the window. She hadn't moved, hadn't left, because now she had nowhere to go. Her escape plan was dead. Her affair? Dead. Her boyfriend, ex-boyfriend, was probably halfway to his car, replaying every conversation they'd ever had and realizing just how deep the lie went. And me? I was done. I should have been done a long time ago. I should have noticed the signs before they were flashing neon red in my face. The little changes in behavior, the gaslighting, the way she would pick fights over nothing, just so she could storm out of the house and be alone for a while. She was never alone. She was never mine. And now she was no one's problem but her own. A sharp knock on the door. I didn't move. Another knock, louder this time. I closed my eyes, inhaled deeply, then exhaled through my nose before turning and opening the door. Emma stood there, arms crossed, her face carefully blank. But I knew her. I knew every single one of her expressions, and this one? This wasn't apathy. This was rage barely held together with duct tape. She was waiting for me to react first. I didn't. She clicked her tongue. You're enjoying this, aren't you? I arched a brow. Enjoying what? She scoffed. Don't play dumb. I leaned against the doorframe, keeping my voice casual. I don't have to play. Her nostrils flared. You think this is funny? I shrugged. I think it's ironic. Emma laughed sharply, shaking her head. You're so goddamn smug. I let out a short, humorless chuckle. That's rich coming from you. Her jaw clenched. She was seconds away from snapping. And I just stood there, watching her unravel. She hated this. Hated that I wasn't yelling. Hated that I wasn't crying. Hated that I wasn't giving her what she wanted. She thrived on control. On being the one who dictated the pace of every argument, every confrontation, every conversation. But now, she had lost control of me. And it was driving her insane. She exhaled sharply, shaking her head like she was disappointed in me. Like I was the one who had failed her. Then she smiled. It wasn't a nice smile. It wasn't even a smug one. It was a weapon. You know, she said, tilting her head slightly, voice dropping into something almost mocking. It's kind of sad. I waited. She took a slow step forward. The way you still think you won. I didn't react. She smirked. Because you didn't, babe. You think I lost everything? Please. She scoffed. I was done with him anyway. A lie. A last-ditch effort to save face. I stayed silent. She stepped even closer, lowering her voice like she was telling me a secret. You're the one who has to go to bed alone tonight. I chuckled. So do you. She stiffened. And I saw it. That tiny flicker of doubt. The first real crack in her mask. Because I was right. She had nothing. No husband. No affair partner. No grand escape plan. Nothing. I leaned in slightly, just enough to make sure she heard me loud and clear. You spent months planning your big exit, I said, my voice calm, steady, but you never actually thought about what would happen when you stepped through that door. She swallowed. I smiled. And now? Now you're stuck. Her breath hitched. I straightened, letting the silence stretch between us. Then, finally, I said the words I should have said a long time ago. Get off my porch. She blinked. I didn't wait for her to respond. I just closed the door in her face. The door clicked shut, and for the first time in a long, long time, the house felt quiet. Not the kind of quiet that follows an argument, where the walls still hum with the echo of voices and the air feels too thick to breathe. Not the kind of quiet that comes with loneliness, where every little sound reminds you that someone who should be there isn't anymore. No, this was a different kind of quiet. The kind that comes when a storm has finally passed. I didn't move right away. I just stood there, staring at the closed door, feeling the weight of everything settle over me. Outside, I heard nothing. No knocking. No screaming. No final desperate attempt to claw her way back inside. Just silence. She was gone. For real this time. And I was still standing. I let out a long, slow breath, running a hand over my face. My entire body felt drained, like I had been running a marathon I never signed up for. And now that it was finally over, I didn't know what the hell to do with myself. For so long, I had been focused on her, on what she was doing behind my back, on how to catch her in the act, on what I would do when the moment finally came. But now that it was over, now that she was gone, I realized something. I had spent so much time chasing answers that I had never actually stopped to ask myself the real question. What comes next? I turned away from the door, walking into the kitchen on autopilot. The coffee maker was still half full from this morning. I had made enough for two like I always did, like I had done for years, even after she started sleeping in later, leaving it untouched. I poured it down the sink. I wasn't bitter about it. I wasn't angry. I was just done. I leaned against the counter, gripping the edge, letting my mind catch up to what had just happened. Emma was out of my life. For real. No more guessing. No more waiting. No more playing detective in my own marriage. Just me. I thought I would feel empty. Thought I would feel the kind of loss that makes it hard to breathe, the kind that makes people break down in the middle of the night, staring at the ceiling, wondering where it all went wrong. But instead, I just felt light. Like I had finally dropped a weight I didn't even realize I had been carrying. Like I could breathe again. My phone buzzed on the counter. I glanced at the screen. A text? From a friend, one of my friends, not the ones who had slowly drifted away over the years as Emma had taken control of my life, making everything about her. Saw what happened. You good? I stared at it for a second, then exhaled, shaking my head with a small, tired smile. Yeah, I think I finally am. I sent the text and locked my phone, pushing away from the counter. I wasn't going to waste another second thinking about her. About what she was doing. About where she was going to go. Because that wasn't my problem anymore. She had been so sure I was the one losing something today. That I was going to be the one left behind. That I was going to be the one who felt empty. But the truth? She was the one who lost. She was the one who had to start over, alone, with nothing but the wreckage she had made. Me? I had finally gotten my life back, and I wasn't going to waste another second of it.